The history of networks is one of technologies enabling new services and better traffic management. However, advances are all too often accompanied by new bottlenecks and pressure points. As the logjam is cleared in one place, a new one is created elsewhere. And that's true of SDN and NFV. The new pain point here will be OSS and BSS, and it'll take more than just a couple of aspirins to get rid of that particular headache.
OSS and BSS have been a major source of pain and issues for major operators around the world. I myself have an operator background and have been involved in some of those transformation efforts, and I can tell you that some OSS and BSS platforms are not optimal. That's an understatement. So as part of this movement, really there is a great opportunity to move a lot of those OSS and BSS functions into software. And the same thing that is happening with the control plane, that means, or other layer 4, layer 7 functions, how can you offer these network applications as software on top of a shared pool of hardware resources, could be commodity hardware or other type of hardware. The same architectural mindset can be applied to OSS and BSS.
OSS and BSS, because they're tightly linked, especially you mentioned the customer experience, billing, online portals, CRM and so on, super important. That's one of the lessons learned. We are early movers in SDN NFV, so when you say commercial stuff, actually we've done commercial stuff. We're actually delivering the services, some of them for over a year to customers, SDN and NFV based. And the pain point was actually OSS first of all, and then the BSS backend. So it is going to be the next battle.
A lot of people who are involved in the technology don't remember that service providers provide services, and that stuff that comes out of the computer systems, that's generated by those computer systems that handle the customer orders, that carve up bits of that network resource to do something useful. And so, like any new technology, yes, there are operational requirements to run it. We know what this SDN and NFV stuff looks like. We've got a whole load of tools like OpenStack now available in the enterprise, but they're not really quite carrier grade yet. And we're doing a lot of work in that area with the industry to understand what's needed. The ETSI Mano activity, for example, has done some great work in looking at what happens at what we call the resource layer, but there's still service layer issues to be sorted on top of that. And what we want to try and achieve is this rapid service innovation for service providers that means that they can bring services onto their network very quickly and cope with the evolving network infrastructure so they get the best return on investment.
We all know that prevention is better than cure, but that takes considerable forward planning. And the runaway dash to provide competitive commercial SDN and NFV services may not allow CSPs to deal with the OSS-BSS problem until much later.
If you look at the evolution of NFV, and we always have to remember that the NFV community is less than 2 years old, so we've grown at an amazing pace. The initial underpinnings of NFV and the community efforts were all centered around trying to create openness and create a reference platform that these VNFs can run on. So you've seen a lot of activity focused around performance optimization, interoperability, testing out technology use cases. The next evolution of that, as we move into a norming stage, if you will, of NFV, then the next evolution is now to take all of those network functions and chain them together as a part of a business process. And that's where we're seeing companies just now begin to peek into how they're going to transform their BSS and OSS environments. But I think that's going to be probably one of the next waves of evolution of NFV.
It's widely recognized within the industry that one of the biggest barriers to change and one of the biggest barriers to new service introduction for service providers is the cost and delay associated with introducing new vendors into that OSS environment and subsequently the BSS environment that feeds into that. So what many of the vendors are working towards is a standard API interface that the existing OSS systems can talk through and program those network elements. In the old days when operators had to import MIB structures and many of those MIB structures were proprietary implementations, there was significant cost and delay in integrating those new vendors into the systems. As we move to standard models today, using the likes of Yang modeling and NetConf, we've now got a standard API interface, which means things can be rolled out much, much faster. So the OSS barrier of old we see being lowered in the future thanks to many of the innovations that have come across from the efforts in that SDN arena.
The transformation of network technologies means business transformation too. Some telcos and service providers accept the fact and are doing all they can to make the process as smooth and as painless as possible. However, others seem to be in denial and are adopting an ostrich-like head-in-the-sand attitude and hoping that the problem will just go away. Well, it won't. The wind of change is blowing through the comms landscape, and it is going to look very different indeed when the storm passes.